Hey, what's up you guys? This is Symbio with T3 Gaming, and today I'm here with a segment that I do called Meta Mechanics, and I do a segment on usually for HeroClix, but I'm going to go and start doing stuff for Destiny as much as I can. And basically what it is, I'm going to break down a deck that I've been playing and or possibly a deck somebody else is playing that I consider fairly competitive. Doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be a top tier or tier 1 deck necessarily, but I think that Luke Ray, which is the deck I'm talking about today, and a deck that I've been playing for a while, at least I tried to play it in Awakenings and it didn't do that great. Spirit of Rebellion gave blue heroes a bunch of great cards, so that makes this deck ton better. We're talking about Luke and 1-die Ray, and I think this deck has the potential to do really well, and especially after the new errata with Fast Hands being a yellow card only, yellow character only, and then also with the errata on Ammo Belt, I think it helps too. So let's take a look at this. Luke Skywalker is probably one of my favorite characters in this Star Wars canon for sure. This is Return of the Jedi Luke, and although he's fairly overcosted in a lot of ways, he's still a great character. He's got 12 health, mono blue, 15 and 20 points. Most people already know what this does, but for all the new people out there, his character ability is after you activate the character, you draw a card. And so what you want to do is be able to play the cards that you have, and that's what this deck does. I call this deck list Speed Luke Ray, and I'll post a link to my whole deck list online. It differs a little bit from a lot of the other Luke Ray decks in that it doesn't play as many expensive upgrades. So its goal is primarily to get to have cards that you can play almost every turn. So if you're grabbing a card from Luke's ability, I want you to be able to play it and use that either for mitigation, to heal, to do a little bit of damage, that kind of thing. So looking at Luke's die, you've got 2 melee, 3 melee, 1 focus, 1 shield, and 1 resource. And the strategy behind this deck is mainly to do damage from Luke. So you never want to really use his dice to focus or really to gain shields, get resources, or anything else but damage. He's your main damage, and that's kind of like how Vader Raider plays. So what I'm building is trying to get focus and speed action cheating off Ray to be able to get that 3 damage. Now every once in a while, of course, you're going to use that focus, you're going to use that resource because you have to, or a shield, but the primary strategy is not to do that. So people are going to attack Luke first, and that's the way to kind of beat this deck, is really to take Luke out as soon as possible. Now if Ray's by herself, of course, she can still do damage, but you know, it's a much tougher, and she has fewer health points. So she's got a 1 melee, a +2 melee, a 1 discard, a 1 resource, and a +1 resource. So she's kind of your money maker. You're also using that +2 melee to guard off other people's dice, which mitigates them. And then, of course, if you hit that +2 melee and you get the action cheat and they can't remove your damage, and you get other melee damage, you can do a lot of damage, especially with the unblockable. So she's, of course, everybody knows she's one of the best cards in the game. This is the full art from the Gen Con promo that I got. And hey, if anybody has that Luke Skywalker full art, hit me up. I really want that. I think it would look great with the other full art Ray. And then I'm actually playing Moisture Farm for my battlefield. Because this deck really doesn't generate a lot of resources. You definitely need some resources to be able to pull off some of the events like Willpower. My Allies of Force is a 2-cost event. So I originally had Scarif, and although it was fairly helpful against certain decks, against Emo Vader it didn't do great, and oftentimes I didn't even get the battlefield anyway, so I figured this was actually better, because if I did get it, it would get me some resources. So those are the characters in the battlefield, and we're going to go through the deck list here. Go ahead and move these up. And let's see, we'll put that there just to make it look a little better. Okay. Again, I'm going to show you guys the deck list on swdestinydb.com if you want to look that up, that's fine, or download it for TTS. And I'm thinking that, I know that this deck, or at least Luke Ray, Rebel Trooper, has a deck that did really well at a store championship. I haven't played a store championship yet because I live far away from one, and it's just been tough. I have played locally quite a bit and some on TTS, and this deck does pretty well. I definitely beat some Poe Maz before the errata, beat Palpatines, Emo, Vader, and Tantrum Twins, whatever you call them, Kylo and Darth Vader. A local player, Steven, plays that, and I do pretty well against that deck. Han Rey, this cuts through pretty quickly because of the Vibro Knife. You just really go after Rey first, take her out, and then take out Han. So, I haven't actually played this against Unkar FN Trooper, but the nice thing about this deck is you don't really need upgrades. So getting upgrades on Rey to action sheet is helpful, but if you are playing against an on-card deck, you kind of want to mulligan for a My Ally is the Force first so that you can get damage on Luke and then do that quickly, or action sheet Rey. Anyway, so let's go into the upgrades here. The first and probably one of the most important upgrades is the Vibro Knife off of Spirit of Rebellion. One of the best cards, and in some ways overpowered right now because it just kind of nerfs so many shields. This is going to go on Rey to give her those 2 actions because of the ambush, and there's a lot of base damage here, and there's also a discard, so I definitely use the discard sometimes, especially if you want to try to get something out of the player's hand that you know they have, like a Fast Hands or a Rise Again or something like that. Do play 2 of those, and you're going to try to hard mulligan for the Vibro Knife so you can get those actions out. A lot of people will doubt this, use the doubt card to doubt this die to get it off the table, so just be aware of that. You're going to want to roll that out like as soon as possible first. Next one is Force Speed. Play 2 Force Speeds. This card is great for multiple reasons. It has 3 special sides which allow you to take 2 extra actions, and that action sheeting will allow Luke to focus to a 3 damage and resolve it, and or you can even use My Ally as the Force on a focus and then do the damage. So there's multiple things you can do with the speed. It also has a focus side and a shield side that you can play off Synchronicity. So getting multiple Force Speeds out is really nice if you get them early. That focus will allow you to focus Luke's die. So put that there. Next, we got Jedi Robes. Now, not that many people are playing this card in this deck. I do see it played quite a bit for Qui-Gon Rey, but it's a great card in this deck, and the reason is because look at those 2 focus sides. Again, it's a 2-cost upgrade, so you can write it onto Rey, get an extra action, and then overwrite it with a Vibro Knife if you want to get the extra action sheets. But if not, just having this out is great because you get those focus sides. And remember, you don't want to use Luke's focus, you want to use another upgrade's focus to get his dice to the side you need. It also has a disrupt, and again, more money to generate. And at the first turn, if you play this, you're getting 2 shields on Rey. So a lot of times, what I'll do is, if I get this in my first hand, I'll put this on Rey, give her 2 shields, and then using a caution, I will remove Rey's dice to give him give Luke 3 shields, and that will keep him protected for the first round pretty well. So even if you're getting hit by a U-Wing or Poe Maz's 3 damage, or even Darth Vader's 3 damage, you're not actually taking a lot of damage. So great card. Not much more to say about Jedi Robes. Next, we've got 2 Mikasa Training. And Mikasa Training has a bunch of modified melee damage there. Got a 1 shield and a 1 resource, and it's got an action which says remove one of your dice showing melee damage and exhaust this upgrade to remove a die showing melee damage. So this is a great card to use with the guard card, that the event that allows you to remove a number of an opponent's dice equal to the melee damage symbol value showing. So if that +2 is showing, allows you to remove 2 of their dice, which is super powerful in this game, especially if you're playing against Palpatine or somebody who has pretty scary dice on the board. You want to get this out so that you can guard and use that for mitigation. Now, of course, anytime you roll that and you've got other base damage sides, you're going to do that damage too. So it's not only an offensive, but it's also a defensive card. All right, next we have one Force Throw, and actually I had two Force Throw in this deck, but in the current meta and competitive format, it's so fast you really don't get to do the Force Throw very often. And also because of Poe and Cunning out there, having a Force Throw can be dangerous against your own characters. So one is good mainly because if you do play against Palpatine, you want to get it out. If you're playing against slower decks, it can be very useful, but it also has the disrupt sides, which right now are really good against endless ranks, Crime Lord, even Rise Again off of a Palpatine or a Vader Kylo deck. So, you know, it's also even good for FN against FN 2199 because a lot of his damage sides are pay damage sides. So being able to disrupt your opponent so that they can't pay to do that damage is really good. So even though it's only one, still a great card to have, and I didn't want to get rid of it. It's like the highest cost card in this deck. All right, now we're going to move into the events. We'll go through the mitigation cards here. We've got two guards, and again, one of the best cards in Spirit of Rebellion. Allows you to remove one of your blue dice showing melee damage to remove a number of an opponent's dice equal to the value of the die you just removed. So if you've got, of course, 3 damage, you can remove 3 dice, but usually you want to do the 3 damage. A lot of times I'm doing this with either Rey's +2 melee or 1 melee, Mikasa Training, and very rarely Luke's die because you really want to use Luke's die to do damage. So it's 2 guards. Now we've got Deflect in here, and this card is not as good as it used to be. It's still very strong. You know, you're going to use it against Palpatine, and that will just destroy Palpatine. And so it's good to have. I am playing 2 of them because people do play ranged in my area, and it's still very helpful even against like a Han Rey. If they don't get that action cheat out and there's a 3 damage to the cost and they can't use it, it's really good. It's also good against you know, FN when he's got the rocket launcher out there and he can't pay the cost side. So I think it's still a great card, and if you don't use it, you discard it for a reroll. But it's only 1 cost. So next we have a 1 Force Misdirection. I just recently put this back in here. I play a lot of mitigation cards in this deck because you're trying to live and survive with Luke, and the low cost mitigation cards are crucial. So if somebody rolls a bunch of blanks and you have a blank showing, you can remove all those blanks. It's one of those cards which is situational, so you don't really want to hold on to it too long just to use it, but if you have no other mitigation, it can be very good. So, and it's only 1 cost. So next we've got Flank. Flank, I know people will be like, why are you playing Flank? You only have 2 characters. Well, in the current meta, like I said, it's very aggressive. If you're playing against Poe Maz, oftentimes they're going to go first because this deck doesn't really get the battlefield that often. And so, you know, they're going to roll out and they're already exhausted one of their characters. So you can play Flank and get rid of one of those Poe dice. Also, if you're playing against Palpatine, you can use it. You know, so sometimes also I'll play slower. If I don't get the action cheat out and I just want to mitigate damage, I will just mitigate and not exhaust my characters, and that's why this is useful. So I only play 1, but it's still a great card to use. All right. Next we've got 2 Cautions. This is one of my favorite cards next to Guard. Actually, I'd probably say this is even better than Guard, just because I love shields. This is something I will hard mulligan for if I'm playing against somebody who doesn't have Vibro Knife. And even if you are playing against someone with Vibro Knife, I do play 1 Riposte in this, and if you get 3 shields and you can riposte that's 3 free damage without rolling. So I'm playing 2 of them, and what this does is oftentimes I will use it on Rey's dice to shield up Luke. So Rey usually doesn't roll what you want, and this allows you to get something good out of it. So get those shields up. All right, next we have 2 Defensive Stance. Again, shields, 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 shields. In this format, you're trying to protect Luke from taking damage, and even just for 1 cost, getting 2 shields can be really good. You know, if you're playing against a Vader Raider or a Vader Kylo and they've got Vibro Knife out, this is not as useful for sure, but if you get it early, it can still mitigate some of that damage. And even against Palpatine, having shields and using it on the 2 damage you take from him just resolving his dice, it just soaks up damage. So again, we're trying to give Luke as much health as we can, and they're cheap upgrades. Next, we've got to use the Force. This card has been crucial in this deck because it allows you to get those action cheats, and if you have 2 actions, then you can play this to use the Force and turn Luke's side to a 3 and then resolve it very quickly without having it being mitigated. In addition, you can use it as mitigation to turn other opponents' dice to blank if you need to. I've also used it to turn it to a focus so that a focus can be turned into another focus, stuff like that. And then if you have 3 resources and you get an action cheat out, you can play this with My Ally as the Force and do 6 damage by leaving Luke's 3 damage in the pool. So, very good card. Definitely a must-have. All right, now we've got another great new SOR card for Blue Heroes. My Ally is the Force. This card is insane. It is like the best card and has won me so many games. Now, I wouldn't say you would hard mulligan for it in the beginning because you kind of want to get the action cheats out, like Force Speed and Vibro Knife. So you got to pay your 2 to get those out. But there are crucial times where you should be always saving and keeping 2 if you have this in your hand so that you can pull this off, because it allows you to keep a die and pool, resolve it, and then get an ambush to resolve it again. So if I have a focus showing, I can, if I get an extra action, I can focus Luke's die to a 3, pay my allies the Force, do 3, and then get the ambush action off of this and do 3 again. So that's 6 damage. So very good. It is resolve 1 of your blue dice though, so you can't resolve any modifiers with it. So very good card, and usually if you get that off more than once, you're going to be taking out a character pretty quick. All right, I got 2 Synchronicity. This is another card that I put in fairly recently that I know that has totally paid off. I've done this at least once or twice per game that I played it. There's a shield side on Luke that comes up a lot. There's also a shield side on the Force Speed that comes up, and a Mikasa Training. So you've got enough shields there that you oftentimes will get a melee and a shield showing, and it's 2 unblockable damage for free. So there's a lot of sneaky damage in this deck. This card, Willpower, Repulsed, so you can get a lot of that extra damage to take out a character for pretty quick. So playing Willpower, great card from Awakenings. I know a lot of my friends and fellow players hate this card because they just, they've got one damage left, and next turn you just play a Willpower, and there's the game. So it heals Luke again and does a damage, so one of the best cards in the game in my opinion. All right, last 3 cards. We've got first Repulsed. I don't use this all the time, but I will use it if I have 3 shields and I need to do that damage, or I have 2 shields and I've got to do the damage. But usually I want to keep the shields up on Luke and Rey, unless I feel like that extra damage really fast is going to take out a character quicker and get those dice off the board. So you got to use it smart. It's great in a Qui-Gon Rey deck. In this deck, I only play 1. You might be able to put it in another one and remove others depending on if you feel like your meta warrants it. So this could be a card that comes and goes, but I've used it probably like on half of my games. So I've got a Force Illusion in here. I had 2 in here, and I ended up taking 1 out because this deck goes through cards. You got to be really wary of if you're playing against a mill deck, because they're all 0 and 1 cost cards, and because of Luke's draw card ability, you're going to go through cards really fast. So Force Illusion's a great mid-game, late-game card on Luke. You just have to be aware of how many cards you have left in your deck. And just also know that Vibro Knife does not work on this card, so, and any unblockable damage does not work. So it's a great card to keep Luke alive, but you got to be careful when you use it. All right, last card here, we've got Return of the Jedi. Now this card has been really useful too, because it allows you to get back any of the cards that you need. If you're not pulling something like a guard or a deflect that you need to get back, you pay one and you can get one of those back. So it is costs 1, so then, you know, it does take money to get the card back and then play the card. But, you know, I have some, you know, there's the moisture farm and other ways of getting resources, so usually I don't have that problem anymore. So I'm only playing 1 because, you know, usually you don't want to waste a slot on another one of these. All right, that is the 30 card deck. Let me see, move these over a little bit. Give it a try and let me know what you guys think. I would love to see what other people have been playing with this deck. I really want Luke Ray to win some tournaments and try to beat some of those villain decks out there outside of Poe Maz, you know. Luke's a great character, Ray's a great card, you know, great character too. I think we can make it happen, folks. So let me know what you're playing. If you try this deck out on TTS, let us know what you think. Put some comments in there. Give me a like if you like the deck tech video. And appreciate you guys watching T3 Gaming. And we'll see you next time, hopefully, for another Destiny video. All right. Thanks.